Hello everyone, how are you doing? As a woman, I feel extremely proud to be a part of a generation which is given me ample opportunities to rise and shine in my life. But today I want to start my video talking about my grandmother who belonged to a generation where she did not have that many opportunities and life was not as pleasant and as less stressful as probably my life is today. So this video is about how as women we can be more strong mentally. So my grandmother, whose name was Sushila, she lost her father when she was all of 10 years of age, and her mother was actually a child bride, and they lived in what is now called Pakistan. And when my grandmother was about I think 17 years of age, she was married off to my grandfather, who was a wonderful man, but in his case it was his second marriage, and they had an age gap of about 9 years between them. But at the same time, my grandmother did not mind that age gap, and she was an extremely entrepreneurial woman in nature. So in that time in Pakistan, she was not very highly educated, and my grandfather was not making that much money. So my grandmother, who was very skilled in making pickles, and she was very skilled in tailoring, she started to make pickles for the neighbors and started charging them some money. And she was so smart that my grandmother at that point in time would be able to make pickles and probably pack them in a wonderful way, and at a certain price point would sell it to the other people in her neighborhood. And slowly she built a nest of little bit of money with herself. Being very financially wise, she decided to buy a piece of land with the money that she acquired over a period of 8 to 9 years. Lo and behold, by the time she was in her late 20s, she had acquired a piece of land for herself, and she had acquired also a certain skill set in terms of tailoring. But what happened beyond that was not even in her wildest of imaginations. My grandmother and my grandfather had to leave Pakistan because India became independent in 1947. And whatever piece of land they had in there, or whatever jewelry she had made for herself, or whatever the other assets that she may have created, she lost all of it. But what she did not lose was her mental strength. Despite the atrocities that she probably went through, and there used to be stories that were narrated to us as kids, this woman did not lose hope, and she came to India, and in Panipat she was given a piece of land as a compensation of the one that she had acquired while she was in Pakistan. She gave 3-room set, and 1 room set she gave it to a tenant, and they lived in a 2-room set. She again started making her pickles. She restarted her life in her mid-30s to be able to build up the assets that she had lost in what came to be known as Pakistan. As strong as she was, she did not waste any time in being indecisive. She did not care about what the other people were saying, or as a woman what she could not do or she could do. The trauma and the anguish that she faced during the partition, she would sit with her sisters and they would have conversations around it, they would cry about it, but they had a way of releasing that pent-up frustration, trauma and anger in their own little community. She built up her money little nest again, and lo and behold, after 7 years, she was able to buy a little piece of land in what is now called Greater Kailash in Delhi. And she again started to build a house there with whatever little savings that she had created. And of course, my grandfather made the contribution to it. But what I'm trying to tell you in this story, through this story, is that my grandmother never ever felt she was lesser of a human being because she was a woman. She never felt that something that her husband could achieve, she could not do it. She never gave way to frustration that led to her bringing down her self-confidence. So what are those 5 things strong women, mentally strong women do in their lives, that's what I want to touch base upon today, giving the example of my grandmother. So when I look at her story, when I reminisce about the kind of woman that she is, I lost her in 2006 when she was about 90 years of age. And when I think about the challenges she faced, she lost two of her children, she lost two of her son-in-laws, and she lost her husband. And I mean, it was a very tragic life that she had, but she stood like a rock through all the ups and downs of her life. So one of the first things that my grandmother always did, which I found absolutely great about her, she was never striving to be perfect. She was never trying to say, मैं सबसे अच्छी हूँ और मैं ही सब काम अच्छा कर सकती हूँ. She was a constant learner. I remember in her 80s, I remember watching a YouTube video and I said, बीजी मेरे को ना ये अचार बड़ा अच्छा लग रहा है नींबू का. So she looked at the video and she said, I've never made something like this, but I'll make an effort. And trust me, she made it better than any YouTuber could have made that pickle. So the point I'm trying to say is, she was striving for excellence. She was constantly learning to improve herself. She never reached a point where she said, I am at the pinnacle of success and I don't need to learn anything. That was never her self-dialogue. The second thing strong mental women do, women who impart strength to others, is they keep moving forward despite the setbacks. If one day went wrong, she got up herself and did something else the next day. Whatever little she could do in the circumstances, in the situation she found herself in, she kept moving forward. Despite the trauma of the partition, despite what she went through in terms of losing her children, she lost two children during pregnancy. She did not have a lot of wealth. What the situation or the life offered to her, she made the most of it. That was the second quality that she possessed. Third quality. Lot of people who came out of the partition and went on to start businesses. My grandfather continued to do a job. He never took a business. These people, her own close relatives, her own cousins, they became multimillionaires because they started businesses. I never recall my grandmother ever comparing herself to any of these women or any of these cousins or any of her relatives. She was like, "Mainu Rabba ne jinna ditta hai, oi bathera hai." Being translated loosely, whatever God has given me, it's enough for me and my family. So she was very content and had gratitude for what life had offered her. She was not losing her energy. She was not losing her sense of self-confidence. She was not losing her hope by constantly comparing herself to others. That was another great, I think, quality which all mentally strong women need to imbibe and inculcate in themselves. Stop comparing yourself to others. The fourth thing that I think my grandmother possessed, which was an absolutely wonderful quality, she never ever doubted her ability to overcome anything in her life. Whether it was losing her entire savings during partition, having lost her children, at a later age having lost my father. My grandmother was alive and my father passed on in his 50s. My aunt also passed on in her 50s. My grandmother was already in her 70s at that point in time. She never had a self-doubt about her ability to deal with the challenges that life will offer to her. She used to always say, I'm a strong woman. I'm not going to give up. I am going to fight it out till the end. How many of us tend to just lose hope? Just like we are like, okay, nothing is going to happen. This happened with me, that is it, over and out. The amount of challenges she went through and not having an iota of self-doubt is what, in my opinion, made her very strong mentally and physically and spiritually. So remembering that we are bigger than whatever life has to offer to us, I think is a superpower, and she possessed that. Last but not the least was this wonderful practice my grandmother did every day in the morning. When she got out of her bed, she had a gratitude practice. She would fold her hands and she would say, Rab tera lakh lakh shukar hai. Basically saying, the universe, the powers that be, God, whatever name you give it, thank you for all that you've given me. This practice she did the day her son died. This practice she did the day her husband died. Probably she did that practice even when she lost her house and during partition. But this was one thing consistent. She was a very early riser. She used to get up at around 4 in the morning. And through her, I learned to rise early because my father imparted that same, legacy to us as kids. Was a consistent feature with her, this practice of gratitude. She was always filled with gratitude for whatever life gave it to her. And I think, fortunately for her, in return to that practice of gratitude, she was blessed with grandchildren, certain amount of wealth, comfort, and everything was provided for her as she grew older. I do hope that a lot of us will ponder and think about the people, the women in our lives, who are absolutely beacons of hope. They could be our own mothers, they could be our grandmothers, and we really stop and reflect upon what makes them who they are. The problem does not lie. The challenge is not that we don't have enough role models. The challenge lies in the fact that we don't recognize those role models in our life. I do hope that you will reflect upon and think of those women who inspired you. Maybe you are one of those. Just take that power and start believing in yourself. Trust me, you're a force of nature. You just need to believe in it. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.